As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call this Clayton Town Council meeting to order. I ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we pause to give you thanks for the many blessings of this day. And we ask, Lord, now that you be with us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, sir.
Perfect. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Up next is your consent agenda.
Move we approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And motion carries. Up next, under administrative items, the first item is the lead and copper rules revision.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, mayor, council, staff. I just wanted to present to you the updates for our lead and copper rule revision that the town has been tasked with by the EPA and the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. We have been working with Jacobs Engineering to assist us get started with the project. So they have got us to the point where we're at today. We have been in many meetings with the state, with Jacobs, with other municipalities, with North Carolina Water, and the like across the state. To this point, they have got us to where we're at now, which is the lead service line inventory. As of September 2023, we started the official project where these two gentlemen here have boldly volunteered to lead one of the biggest town staff-driven projects the town has ever started. They are the two senior guys from our Water Resources Maintenance and Operations Division, so it was good to see those guys step up and volunteer to help us out. What is the lead and copper rule revision? Basically, after Flint, Michigan, there were some treatment changes in the water system in Flint. When they changed the water quality, a lot of the flaking of the lead piping that they had in their system began to flake off and get into the water system. We don't have many lead lines, if any at all. We don't think we have any, but that's the whole purpose of this process, is to find out if we have any. So we're tasked with identifying any and all lead service lines, potential galvanized service, copper, PEX, poly, you name it. If it's in the ground, we're tasked with identifying it. And where this project is different than most is we know 95% of the time what the town side is, but we have very few, if any, records of what was actually installed on the customer side. That's the biggest portion of this product, is finding out and identifying what is on the customer side of the service line. So with this materials inventory, you can see from the slide that we're at the very beginning stages now. As we go, we're continuing to educate the public and ourselves, because it seems the rule is ever changing. There's still a lot of gray area that we don't know, and we're trying to find out as we go. With our help from the DEQ, they've been a tremendous help to guiding us in what they think should happen. but they themselves don't know either because the EPA is ultimately in charge of the rule. So once we get through this initial inventory process and get it complete, we have to have every unknown service line identified by October 2024. That's approximately 1,800 services, customer side and town side. Any that we do not identify have to be identified as unknown, and they have to be treated as is their lead. So we are doing our best to try to knock out all 1,800 of these so we do not have any unknowns between now and October of next year. So we have a partnership with North Carolina 811. It's so when we have any locates to be called in, we are calling those in so all the underground services can be identified. Town staff is doing our water, sewer, and electric locates, but we do have to have partnerships and cooperation with the gas companies and the telecommunications companies. To this point, I think we've called in 253 locates in the first month, so it's been a very busy first month. Part of the project is the area that we're working on is houses constructed in 1987 or before. So most of these homes are very old and we don't have a lot of information on them. And some of them were installed where the town standards are not in place. So if we find any of those issues, we are doing our best to update any straight set services where they don't have an actual meter set so they can turn the water on off effectively. We are going back and installing those so they're current to town standard. In partnership with the engineering department, we are trying to get an RFP for an on-call plumber or plumbers in the instance where we damage a customer side service line. The customer side is not in our purview, so we are going, if we do damage it while we're excavating, we will have to call a plumber to come repair the line and reconnect to the backside of the town center. Probably as of this point so far, we're using CityWorks with the help of our IT department. They have done many projects for us in water resources over the years, but this one is by far the largest. They have created all new assets across the board. You'll see in a few slides of how many dots that they have been able to create and identify and put a spreadsheet that we have to present to the state. Just for example, the spreadsheet, if you print it all out, it's about this big. I didn't bring it with me today, but it is more information that is good information to have that we currently do not possess. And so back to the dots, if you look at the map, all of the gray double dots are what we have to identify. We've started that process, and like I said, there's approximately 1,800 of those. We have found some that we can eliminate because they're just incorrectly marked in our GIS system, but unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of digging as we go forward. As you can see here, some of those gray dots have turned to blue on blue. That's our first area of excavations that we did. We started in what we like to call birdland. All the streets are named after birds. So that's where these two gentlemen started and have identified all of those in that area and have now moved on closer to the treatment plant. So far, those numbers are of last week. Just to update those numbers, we have been excavating for 13 days. We have completed 174 service line excavations. We've called in 253 locates, and we're averaging 13.4 service line identifications a day. Our goal was 12 a day. That doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of a year, and some of the conditions that we found so far, that 12 is a really tasking number for our guys. However, with that being said, last week, even in a rain-shortened week, they were able to complete 64 in 3 and a piece of days last week. So they're improving day by day and getting better and better at what they're doing. For the town staff and customers, we do have all this information on our town website. So if anybody has any questions, they can look there and find any information. As we progress in the project, we are going to create a standalone website through Esri arc map where they have all of this information, so customers will be able to go and actually click on their service dots and see, have they been identified, do we know what they are, or anything like that. We are offering a self-evaluation survey that the customer can complete for us to help us out, so all they have to do is fill out the information, take a couple of pictures, and they can help us fill out some of those dots as well. Here's just how it looks on our town website. Yeah, there's other information here that we can find, water quality reports, since this is tied into lead and copper. That's where all of our sampling comes from. We are required to sample 30 different locations in our Clayton system, and as of our system change last July, we're now required to sample 40 locations for lead and copper in our Clayton North Riverwood system. So we had a few goals. This is such a lofty project that we have decided that we want to build some leadership within. These two guys volunteered. They're our senior guys, so we're hoping that they can gain some leadership experience guiding crew members to move them to the next level of their life with the town. We do have the lofty goal of identifying all the unknowns. Is that likely? Maybe not, but we're still going to give it our best shot so we don't have to go and identify something falsely because the EPA says that's what we have to do. Other goals is we want to replace all galvanized service lines in the town that we find as we're doing these excavations. Galvanized is steel. They corrode really bad. They get rusty. All of the tuberculation inside the lines reduces capacity for customers. So we have found 9 of those so far, and those have been identified and will be replaced in the future. As I've already said, the meter boxes, we're going to bring any of those in, or the sets to current standards. And as we're going through, we are updating our GIS data to reflect any and all changes that we're doing to the meter box, to the setter, to any service lines or anything of that nature. And then once again, this is our goal to reach 12. Currently, 1 month in, we're at 13. So I think we're overachieving right now, and we hope to expand that as the winter goes. We're going to get more crews involved as the overall workload for the town kind of slows down for the winter months, and hopefully we can knock this out before October of next year. So I want to give the chance for these guys to talk. This is Dan Kelly. He's been here for 5 years, so he's one of our senior guys in the operations side. So he's responsible for the digs and the excavation, service line, sewer. He does a little bit of all. And then this is Dylan Carroll. He is also been here for
8 years.
8 years. How many in water sewer?
7.
7 in water sewer. So he's on the lift station side of things. So he manages lift stations, water services. He does a lot of our CCTV for our sewer lines, so make sure we don't have blockages or any of that. Like, so if y'all want to say anything? All right, talking to group. Does anybody have any questions as to what we're doing, how we're doing it, any feedback, how we're currently sitting?
So basically, this is a mandate,
This is a mandate.
and we have to come into compliance. Any home built prior to 1987 is what we have to go and check out.
Yes, we have to go check it out. All of the blue on light blue dots, they do allow records to be had or construction date as an identifier. So with our help of our GIS staff, all of the blue on blue dots have been identified as post 1988. So that does eliminate quite a few of them. I think we have approximately 13,000 services in town. So about 80% are post 1988, fortunately. That is one thing that the growth of Clayton coming after 1987 has been beneficial to us, because some municipalities do have many, many more millions potentially of services they got to identify the same way.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Arch?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, we can't hear you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for all you're doing to protect groundwater. I mean, that's our drinking water for folks in their homes. That's so important. We saw what happened in the news with Flint, so it's great that we're able to be proactive and get good people working. Thank you.
Or thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much for the update. All right, up next on the agenda is the youth athletics.
I'm short.
We know.
I want to thank Mayor, Council, and staff for allowing us the time to come up, give a quick update. So a few months back, town staff, town management came together to talk about youth athletics. We saw a couple gaps since we play countywide, not just in town, but also other municipalities. And then we saw some gaps in our training of our internal staff, our part-time staff. So over the last couple of months, Trey Meek and Megan came together and they researched. They did, Megan did the staff training. Trey did the policies, procedures for athletics as far as when we go in the county, rules, regulations, those types of things. And so I'll let each of them have a couple minutes, give you guys an update about where they are, where we're going. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Up first is Trey.
Awesome.
Mayor, council, town staff, good to see y'all. Sorry, I like to lighten up the room. So yeah, what, 15 months on the job now?
Yeah.
Hit the ground running. Nonstop. Prior to my last stop, I did not play in a countywide league. So it's been a little different. It's been a fun adjustment. We do not play countywide in all of our sports. Basketball is a great example. We have around 600 kids, so we can keep everything pretty much in-house. And in fact, I think the guy over in Benson said, please don't bring any boys teams over. You have too many. So when we hit the ground running, many of you have kids, so you've probably seen the parent behavior that has escalated, and as an official, it's pushed officials away. So once we saw that, we went in, spoke with Smithfield, Benson, Kinley, Four Oaks. Is that it? There's like 5 municipalities that have Parks and Rec, and we run the Johnston County Athletic Association, JCAA for short. So we all went in, looked at our parent code of conduct and our coaches code of conduct and kind of tried to line it up as close as we could. And what we did here in Clayton is we have attached the parent code of conduct to registration. So you cannot register your kid without agreeing to this code of conduct. And on the code of conduct, it also says you're responsible for anyone you bring with you. Because we had an instance in the spring where we had someone bring a grandparent who didn't think she needed to abide by the same code of conduct. So now we have the parents, yeah. So now we have the parents signing it, acknowledging that they are also responsible. In that, we started meeting countywide more with the Parks and Rec athletics people. There's a lot of new people around the county as well. And so we went in and made a code of conduct for coaches that we give to our coaches at our head coaches meeting before each season. But we also found a problem that just because someone was banned from our facility for their conduct, it didn't carry over to the next municipality. So when we met in August, we all agreed that if somebody is banned because of their conduct at one place, we're going to do it countywide. That way they can't follow and still do what they were doing here without our hands or control over it because they're somewhere else. Megan?
In addition to that, we've also created a PowerPoint for increased staff training. We do that twice a quarter, well, each quarter for sport-specific training with each season. The PowerPoint includes how-tos as far as practices, competitions, and games. They also are required to read over our employee handbook, our part-time staff handbook, which basically tells them their duties and lets them know of their dress code while working with Clayton Parks and Recreation Athletics. We also implemented videos on how to set up certain things. We have preschool sports as well, so we have like the little goals that you got to put on top of big goals and all that type stuff. So how-tos on how to do that so nobody gets hurt. And then the manual also, or the PowerPoint also includes like, you know, proper training on how to keep score and things along that line when it comes to different sports. That's pretty much it. The end.
Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Mr. Thompson?
How many children did you say participate? That you know, is there a number like annually in youth athletics, or is there, you know, how many roughly do you?
So volleyball grew this year to about 150. Our youth soccer, we do 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 225 kids in that.
right at 600.
Basketball's around 600. We actually had to push our numbers in one age group because we filled up before registration ends on the 29th of this month. And baseball and softball typically lag. I don't know why. Kids just aren't playing baseball and softball as much anymore. So I would say there was probably 200 to 300 kids. But I think post-COVID, kids are starting to come out more, get outdoors. I think we had 8 T-ball teams, which is where you really get the kids in. So T-ball was big in the spring. Hopefully they'll stick to it and keep moving up.
That's great. You know, I think you have a unique job that it's one thing to supervise your own staff and each other, but you're also responsible for other people's kids and for the conduct of other people. And it's a sad time that people don't know how to act anymore in public. You know, that's just sad, but it is the reality. It's where we're at. And I just want to say thank you as a staff for being proactive and, you know, setting the ground rules. It's much better to have the rules ahead of time than have to react when somebody doesn't do right. So I think you guys are doing a good job, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm still kind of blown away that grandma and grandpa get out there and raise the devil. That just, what happened to modeling the way? They must have not taught that back then. But, you know, nonetheless, I agree a lot with what Jason said. You know, it's good to be proactive. It would be nice that we don't have to waste our time doing these types of things. But, you know, for the better of everybody and everybody's experience, it's just some ground rules you got to put in place. And we never thought really it would come to that, but it's a different world, you know. So we appreciate all the good work and effort and all you do to promote park and recreation for the town of Clayton. It's one of our number one assets.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. All right, up next, introduction and special presentation, National Arts and Humanities Month proclamation. I'm going to ask our representatives to step forward from all of our collective arts and humanities, cultural arts, public art, all the above, any and all. Come forward because I want to read a proclamation and step down and have a photograph made with you. Awesome. Town of Clayton National Arts and Humanities Month proclamation. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, and whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, and whereas the arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of every American, and whereas the National Arts and Humanities Month is an opportunity for everyone to help change public perception and promote the crucial role of the arts and humanities in promoting, connecting cultures, highlighting inequities, and making our communities healthier and stronger. And now, therefore, on behalf of the Clayton Town Council, I, Mayor McLeod, hereby proclaim the month of October as National Arts and Humanities Month and call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our town and to specifically encourage greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in their towns and cities. Proclaimed this 16th day of October, 2023. And we want to thank you all for the great work that you do for the town of Clayton and to promoting us as an arts community on so many levels. It is, again, one of those areas that has made Clayton become known as a true arts community, and we have you to thank for that.
And while the mayor comes down, I do want to address he and the council, executive team, staff. You guys have made this possible. We've had 2 recent sellouts. So we appreciate all of your support because you are the ones that allow us to do what we love. So thank you.
All coming up. Oh, Nathaniel.
Hey, Mike. Oh, Mike. Mike, can I get you on this end down here? Come in this way a little bit. Yeah, perfect. It's my bag. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, up next is public hearings. The next item is 2023-92 ANX 2311 Highway 42 non-contiguous annexation. And I believe we're going to entertain a motion to continue this to the November 6th, 2023 meeting.
Oh, yes, Mayor, Town Council, thank you. Regarding items 2023-92, 2023-93, and 2023-96, we do recommend a motion to continue in order to ensure proper notice and publication.
All right, any questions or comments for staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion on those three items to continue to the November 6th, 2023 meeting. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I move we continue 2023-92, 2023-93, and 2023-96 to the November 6th meeting.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the continuation of those three items till the November 6th, 2023 meeting. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, and motion carries. Thank you, sir. Up next is ordinance 2023-10-03 to enact the codified Clayton Unified Development Ordinance.
All right, I'll start talking while there it goes. All right, good evening, Mayor, Town Council, Jonathan Jacobs. I am the Interim Planning Director and Assistant Engineering Director. Tonight, I have the pleasure of presenting our consultant who will go over the new Unified Development Ordinance. As you may recall, following the adoption of the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan in November of 2021, Council at the time directed staff to begin a comprehensive update of the Unified Development Code. This would be the first comprehensive update to the Unified Development Code since the current Unified Development Code was adopted in November of 2025. There have been several updates since 2005, but this will be the first kind of comprehensive overhaul of that. And through that time, our population has more than doubled in size. So following that direction, staff performed a rigorous request for qualification review, and the selection panel chose Code Right planners to perform this service for the town, and have embarked in an 18-month process to write a new Unified Development Ordinance. Staff and the consultant posted the public draft on September 11th, 2023. This was also provided to council on that same day. And this public draft is a result of a total of 13 Unified Development Ordinance Steering Committee meetings, multiple development stakeholder interviews, 3 public forums, and extensive staff review and collaboration to discuss the findings in the public drafts. The steering committee consisted of the planning board and 3 members of the Board of Adjustment, and staff or the consultant kept a dedicated website to keep the public and the development community informed of the process. So tonight, staff is going to present, I'm going to bring the consultant, Chad, up to present kind of the process in more detail. But staff is requesting council consider an ordinance tonight and adoption of the new Unified Development Ordinance. And in summary, that ordinance will repeal and replace in its entirety Chapter 151, the Flood Damage Prevention Code, Chapter 155, the Unified Development Code, Chapter 156, the Erosion and Sediment Control Code, and 158, the Stormwater Management Code, all from the Code of Ordinances, and then updating Chapter 51.03C, our Utility Extension Policy, to reference the Unified Development Code. On September 25th, the same presentation was provided to the planning board, and they provided a unanimous vote of recommendation of approval. And with that being said, I'll bring Chad up, Chad Meadows, and he will give you a greater detail, and then we'll come back up and talk through next steps.
Thank you, Jonathan. Mr. Mayor, council members. Good evening. I'm Chad Meadows. I am principal with Code Right Planners. We're here tonight to consider the UDO draft. We've been working on this task for, as Jonathan mentioned, about 18 months. We're near the finish line. This is an overview. I'm going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes talking about these 5 topics, answering any questions you guys have. This slide shows our project scope and schedule, 7 steps in the process. We've completed 5 of those 7. We're still engaged in task 6. The adoption version of the document's been available for review since about the 11th of September. We've since had our 3rd and final meeting with the development community's focus group, and council, I believe, has considered some parts of this document on October 2nd of this year. Our hope is that council will decide to adopt the document after we discuss the changes proposed since 9/7/23. Delivery of the final version of the document will take place after adoption. One point I want to make to you tonight, and you'll hear me make again, is that regardless of the adoption date, we suggest that the UDO effective date be delayed until January 1st of 2024. That gives us time to complete the procedures manual, tweak any application forms, train staff, get comfortable with the document, promulgate it throughout city departments, et cetera. So that would be our suggestion. As a refresher, we didn't just jump right into drafting the development code. You may recall we prepared a diagnosis back in June of 2022. It served as sort of the roadmap for the UDC update. It included a review of the comprehensive plan, the current UDC. It summarized the input collected from stakeholders and provided a set of recommendations organized into 7 key themes. We also prepared an annotated outline, a abbreviated version of the draft UDO. Public engagement has always been a pivotal part of this process. This slide shows the variety of ways in which we integrated with the public. We collected information. If anybody wanted to talk with us, we made ourselves available to do that. We remain committed to continued discussion as long as it takes. That's it for the project background. We've followed a pretty methodical process. We've had a lot of input. We've incorporated that input wherever we could. What we tried to do was balance the outcome with the input we've received, stay true to the contract, the project goals, best practices. What are those project goals? Wouldn't be a Code Right presentation if I didn't spend a second talking about the project goals. These are the 5 goals. They've been our compass point. They've been our guiding light as we've worked through this project. User-friendly code, implementing the comprehensive plan, raising the bar for development quality, wider range of housing options, employment-generating uses, fostering development in downtown, and protecting community character. Hopefully you agree that we've met those goals. I'd like to talk about 5 key changes between your current UDC and the draft UDO before you tonight. Usability, flexibility, precision, comprehensiveness, legal sufficiency. In terms of usability, there are 9 chapters in the draft UDO. All chapters bear an alphabetic naming sequence. All main sections inside every chapter also bear an alphabetic naming sequence. There's a new page layout. The document has digital bookmarks. There are charts, graphics, illustrations, navigational aids, headers, cross-references, tables of contents, FAQ, glossaries, indexes, and numbered statements, no prose. We tried very, very hard to make this a dynamic, beautiful document that people will enjoy working with. The text is prepared to be simple and straightforward for the layperson. Flexibility, very, very important part. Good code's balance between flexibility and predictability. We've integrated flexibility in the procedures, in the development standards themselves, and in the various aspects that we would use to review site plans. So administrative adjustments, staff has the ability to make some minor de minimis changes. We've got the 3-tiered conditional rezoning process where people can mix and match and choose their approach. The 5 new conditional districts, comprehensive fee in lieu approach for almost every development feature that's available, detail on vested rights, conservation subdivision options. We use a menu-based approach to many of the design standards. There's alternative methods of parking, lighting, signage. 3 different kinds of open space, sustainability incentives, density bonuses, and on. Precision. Measurable review criteria. That is a hallmark of an effective development code. Review criteria are the things that we use to make decisions on applications, and by and large, those should be measurable. We have a standardized application process language for you. All 31 application procedures follow the exact same structure: purpose and intent, applicability, exemption, process, etc. We've included a detailed rules of measurement section that addresses dimensional standards, development standards. There are distinctions in the different kinds of subdivisions that are authorized under North Carolina state law and how those are processed in accordance with the UDO itself. I mentioned the 3-tiered conditional rezoning process. We also have a 3-tiered use classification system that allows the town to process unlisted use types, new use types that come along that we don't know what they are today, but we have a means to accommodate them in the future. Finally, violations and remedies are enumerated, so very detailed layout of how enforcement is handled here in the town. Comprehensiveness. As Jonathan mentioned, there are numerous chapters in your city code which are now being migrated to the UDO, flood protection, stormwater, etc. We've overhauled your water supply watershed protection rules based on the new state model. I mentioned earlier there's 31 application procedures. We've added 10 new zoning districts. There are 150 principal uses in this code, 5 sets of nonconformity provisions, 98 pages of definitions, 81 summary tables, and 287 illustrations. I counted them. Comprehensiveness, very important part of an effective development code. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, legal sufficiency, because your code is only as good as the person in the black robe decides it is. We've incorporated purpose and intent statements for every procedure, every district, every development standard. There's, again, a detailed section on vested rights and how those operate, a very detailed appeal procedure, the 5-part determination procedure specified in the statutes. We've got evidentiary procedural rules for the Board of Adjustment to use, transitional provisions for how you handle applications that are in process at the time that the UDO is adopted, content neutral signage, up-to-date telecommunication facility standards, prohibited uses section, review authorities, enforcement process description, and very detailed plan and process descriptions. So we like to think that we've sort of covered the waterfront in terms of legal sufficiency. to talk a little bit about the testing results. This is task 5 in the process. And the reason that the testing is done is not necessarily to go through every nook and cranny of the ordinance, but rather to look for fatal flaws. Are there any sort of big picture problems or concerns that were uncovered either by the consulting team or the development community representatives who were chosen to have a look at the hypothetical testing sites? We looked at 5 approved plans, 2 subdivisions, 2 commercial sites, and an industrial site. We re-examined those sites in light of the new UDO provisions. There was an internal review with staff and the consulting team to go over the findings of this investigation. And there were 4, but we'll just call it 3 development community meetings where we went over the process, the plans, and folks' comments. You should have in your packet a document called the errata sheet for the Clayton UDO dated 10/11/23. This document summarizes the information that was collected from the testing process. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about that. 3 groups of recommendations in this document. Those revisions that were suggested by the consulting team. As we were going through the testing process, we had at least 6 aha moments ourselves and said, oh my goodness, we need to address this, change this, make this better. There were a series of 5 recommendations, either by town staff or by town council, that were considered back in early October. And this document reflects those. Finally, there are a series of questions or comments from the development community representatives, items 13 through 22. And I'm going to focus primarily on those. We'll touch on the other ones quickly, but want to go through these with you as a group. Okay. Items 1 through 12 on the errata sheet include potential revised UDO text. Maybe you saw that in the chart that was included in the errata sheet. We basically provided for you what exactly would change in the UDO language were that suggestion or recommendation to be included in the UDO. So that's there for you, just so you know kind of what to expect and what it would look like. This slide has the first 2 sets of suggestions. And these 4 are the consulting team's suggestions. Some very minor kinds of issues with respect to graphic clarity, adding some additional information about invasive plant council and or registered landscape architects being involved in reforestation plans, et cetera. This pair of slides shows the most significant, though not substantive, change that is included based on the consulting team's comments. These slides set down the different types of required open space set aside. You heard me say earlier there's 3 kinds of open space, okay? The kind of open space that you provide is controlled by the zoning district that you're located in, okay? Now, this table was added to give additional guidance to applicants, staff, elected officials about the kinds of open space that need to be provided based on the zoning district where development's located, okay? I'm not going to go over this all with you. I'll just mention that, if you're non-residential, basically your open space requirement's going to be passive. Could you provide a different kind of open space? You absolutely could, and that's certainly acceptable. So there's passive space, there's active space, and there's gathering area. For the most part, any use can provide any one of those use types. And it's the only hard threshold is residential development of 6 or more units needs to ensure that at least half of the open space provided is either active or gathering area. Okay. This pair of slides shows the 6 changes that were proposed by town council, essentially, and staff. We wanted a small adjustment to the stormwater language with respect to the design, storm, and duration of calculation. There were a couple adjustments to the use table, specifically removing multifamily as a by right use type in 2 of the 3 downtown subdistricts, and also removal of the ability for vehicle sales to be permitted by right, removal of flea markets to be permitted by right. So handful of minor adjustments to the use provisions, suggestion for all multifamily development to include some kind of outdoor space whether that was a patio or a balcony with a minimum dimension of 7 feet in any direction. We've added some requirements for rear-loaded lots to incorporate on-street parallel parking spaces, just so we don't have blocked driveways and there's places for guests to park, et cetera. So those are the basic range of comments that we received based on council's discussion on October 2nd, okay? To the comments that came from the development community, there are 10 of them. Number 13 deals with concern about the base densities for the mixed use and multifamily districts. After we had a conversation with the development community and explained the nature of the 3-tiered conditional zoning process, their response was, oh, okay. So we basically, they've withdrawn that concern. Number 14 deals with the current proposal to not count one-car garages towards off-street parking requirements. This point was raised by the development community in our meetings. There was concern expressed about this from the planning board. I believe there was concern expressed about the possibility of crediting those one-car garages by town council. At this point, we're suggesting that those standards be left in as drafted. In other words, single-car garages are not counted towards off-street parking requirements. Okay? Number 15, the open space set-aside requirements. And just as a quick refresher, it's 10% of the site area for residential developments over 5 units, and anywhere from 5 to 7% for non-residential, 7 for mixed use, 5 for your basic commercial site. The suggestion from the development community is that those percentage numbers are too high, and that they're higher than surrounding communities. In my experience in the codes that I've drafted in North Carolina, those numbers are very much on par with the kinds of open space requirements we've seen and continue to see going forward. Now, one thing I'll mention to you is that there is also a parkland dedication requirement for certain kinds of residential development, and those are additive standards. In other words, some kinds of residential need to have private common open space and parkland, whether that's dedication or a fee in lieu. And it might be that members of the development community are concerned about how those two things interact. But we had this conversation. We had suggested a parkland dedication requirement of, I believe, 800 square feet, and there was a suggestion that that be raised back up to what it is today, 1/35 of an acre, 1,200 square feet plus or minus. So that is where we are with that suggestion. There was a comment number 16, the open space set-aside requirement of 10% for residential subdivisions with large lots, those lots that are 20,000 square feet in size or larger. Could we anticipate that residents on those larger lots would use their own yards for recreational purposes, and therefore could we reduce the amount of open space that would be required for residential developments with these large lots of 20,000 square feet or larger? It's a question for council to consider as drafted. The 10% standard applies regardless of lot size. Could you lower that percentage threshold for the largest lots in the community? Sure, you could. An applicant could also use the conditional rezoning process to lower that percentage. The applicant could also use a fee in lieu approach. The applicant could also use sustainable development incentives as a way to meet those requirements without providing the open space. So there's a variety of different ways for the mousetrap to be built, but that's the comment that the development community provided for these larger residential lots. Handful of questions about how the town is going to calculate active recreation area. The inclusion of active recreation area in open space set aside is not a new concept. This is a regulatory practice that's in place in numerous communities throughout North Carolina. It's been in place for the last 20 years. I've not heard of any problems staff has had with calculating the active recreation land area that's necessary. It's basically a measurement of the land area that's associated with active recreation. Yeah, there's probably a little bit of staff interpretation in there, and that should be expected. But by and large, this hasn't been a groundbreaking problem that local governments haven't been able to solve. How much should, how do we calculate active recreation area? Well, how much land is devoted to it? Get a tape measure. Similar kind of question about the fee in lieu for active open space. Now remember, active open space is courts and fields and playgrounds and buildings and pools and those kinds of things. These are private, common, open space features that are intended for active recreation. How do we calculate the fee if somebody chooses to use a fee in lieu instead of providing the feature and that fee in lieu is approved through the review process? Well, the answer is as in accordance with 2313G that sets down how land area value is calculated, and anybody who includes something that is a built feature has a requirement to submit from their engineer an analysis of what that cost is. So how we'll determine the cost is by what the applicant gives us. Okay, that's consistent with what's in the procedure as drafted. Number 19, sustainable development incentives should be supplemented to allow credits for provision of open space set-aside features that exceed basic requirements. That's a policy matter. I don't have a problem with a suggestion like that. I think that we'll take our guidance from you. If council feels like that's something that you'd like to encourage, we can absolutely prepare standards that would reward an applicant who opted to provide more open space than the minimum threshold. An interesting question in the light of the fact that many of the other questions talked about we require too much, but there it is. So number 20, the UDO needs more clarity on how gathering spaces are defined and how they must be configured to ensure these spaces are useful, safe, and make sense. It's actually a really good comment, and I agree with it. The example that's often cited, and I'm sure we've all seen it, is the gazebo in the middle of the parking lot, or the gazebo off in the hinterland of some site that's maybe a little sketchy and kind of dangerous, and maybe there's loitering. And how do we make sure that the gathering area requirements don't yield that outcome for development in Clayton? It's a good comment, and I think it's one that's worthy of some additional discussion. Does that negate the requirements for gathering area? No. Does that negate, the efforts that we're working on tonight? No. I think we'll have plenty of opportunity to provide some additional guidance about how gathering area should be accommodated, where it should be located, what kind of features would be appropriate. Remember, there's a handful of different kinds of things that can be credited as gathering area, including rooftop gardens, rooftop space, indoor atriums, and many, many other things. So it's not just the gazebo in the middle of the parking lot. There's a lot of other features that can be provided. Does the UDO prohibit provision of the gazebo in the middle of the parking lot? No, it doesn't. And maybe we do need to deal a little bit more with that. But by and large, I wouldn't say that the gathering area material is half-baked. Maybe we do need a little tweak here or there to specify, how do we make this, fit correctly? But that's a discussion for later. Number 21, didn't really understand what this standard means or what the question was. There was landscaping standards need to recognize areas where people drive or walk and should ensure that landscaping does not interfere with visibility of pedestrians or drivers. Great point. Already do that. We have sight distance triangle requirements. There's placement for landscaping outside of rights of way, etc. Now, can a tree or a shrub grow into the right-of-way? Absolutely. That's an operational issue handled by the city code. That's not a development issue associated with an application for development. Okay. And number 22, there was a request to clarify if planted landscaping does indeed count towards the requirement of tree protection or reforestation. And the answer is yes, it does. Any tree that's planted that's 3 inches in diameter or larger does count towards the reforestation credit program. So we have incorporated that into the provisions. That covers the waterfront of the questions that we've received from the development community. I have one more slide, and I think Jonathan has a couple of slides for you, but, and I'm happy to stop now and entertain any questions you might have about any of these, or I can give you my last slide and let you guys carry on, whatever your pleasure.
Questions or comments? Yeah, Mr. Sims.
Just 2 questions. So what was the amount of pages increased
From the 2005 version, I have no idea how long your 2005 code is.
So there's not really a good way to compare the current code versus the new code because the current code is written in a codified format like our code of ordinances. This is a much more fluffy and pretty document. As Chad alluded to, it's much easier to read and there's a lot more visuals, larger fonts, those kinds of things. So it's really not a comparison.
Second question is also curious to how much less illustration.
I would say there's 99% more illustrations in the proposed UDO versus the current. I think our sign section is the only one that has visuals today.
All right, anyone else? Mr. Casey?
I had a question about, excuse me, I had a question about the open space set aside requirements for the large lot subdivisions. Is that 10% or was that 30%?
In number 16, the town clerk sent a correction to this document. The person that provided that comment indeed did say 30%. So number 16 should read the open space set aside requirement of 30% for residential subdivisions with lots over 20,000 square feet are too high and should be reduced since residents have large lots to meet their recreation needs.
I made that change because the standard is not 30%. It's 10%.
Okay.
I'm not sure where the 30% number came from, but that is inaccurate.
Okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
I will also note what is not shown on the screen. There is staff commentary for all of the orange recommendations in your staff packet or in your council packet.
I just want to call your attention to 5 short things and then answer any other final questions you may have. As Jonathan mentioned, the planning board heard this matter on the 25th of September. There was unanimous recommendation for approval. I wanted to be sure that everybody understood that myself, the staff, we all understood that the UDO is a living document. This is a document that you don't set it and forget it. It's going to be revised over time. You'll make changes to it. The General Assembly will force you to make changes to it. This document will be something that is in evolution, and that's normal and natural. And it's one of the reasons why we incorporate at least 30 hours of free pro bono time to help you get through the first round or 2 of those. Very typical stuff. I mentioned the delayed effective date and the reasons for that. Everybody seems to agree that January 1st of next year is a good time frame. If this matter gets delayed and significantly and you find yourself in December before you're able to adopt, if you choose to, you might want to think about being sure that there's at least 30 days to give folks time for training, give us time to produce the physical document, get it on the web, etc. 2 points I'd like to make to you. I'm sure staff covered these with you, but I want to be sure that I raise this with you because the statutes are very clear about it. And the first of those is that in the event that town council chooses to adopt the UDO, whether that's tonight or at some point in the future, the motion needs to clarify whether or not the council believes that the UDO is consistent with the policy guidance or not. Okay, so that needs to be incorporated into the motion language. I make the motion that this UDO is consistent or is not consistent. Okay, that needs to be in the record. The other prong the two-prong issue there is making sure that you clarify whether or not you believe the UDO is reasonable and in the public interest. And those are the words that you need to use in the motion, should you get to that point, okay? And the courts will be looking for those phrases: consistency, reasonable, public interest, okay? Next steps, obviously, we'll be around for a little while. This is, I said we were coming to the end of the race. That's coming to the end of the adoption process. There's still a variety of things to do. We've got a procedures manual to work on. We've got delivery of the adopted version, et cetera. There's some training. And then the 30 hours that we give to the town to be part of, y'all's adjustments and your breaking in period, if you will. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions. And
Questions or comments?
I thank you very, very much. It's been a real pleasure to work on this. I look forward to the coming days and weeks. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I want to highlight a few things. So in your staff report, there is a copy of the new proposed ordinance, which consists of quite a few things. It's about 3 pages long. That would, again, repeal and replace chapters 151, 155, 156, 158, and reword 51.03C. As Chad mentioned, the effective date is currently proposed to be January 2nd, 2024. That's the first work day that we would accept submittals in the new year. And I'll clarify the typo, number 16 of the recommended, the member that made that statement, it should say 30%. In that ordinance, you will see our updated zoning district translation. So all currently zoned properties will retain their zoning district, potentially with the exception of a section in Riverwood, which is proposed to be rezoned because it will be inconsistent. That market commercial area through the core of Riverwood there, which will happen at a later date. All of those zoning districts will translate to the new zoning districts of the UDO, so there's no rezoning necessary to develop or the rights to that property, and that's outlined in the document. There are 6 new zoning districts proposed, 3 new overlay districts, with 2 of those overlays just being the groundwork for future documents. So they're not necessarily being applied to any property, but they're there to assist staff in the future with small area plans, or if we determine that there's a desire for a local historic district. So considerations tonight, the town council shall consider the recommendation of the planning board and the interim planning director. The town council may approve the UDO ordinance, deny the ordinance, or recommend additional changes to the ordinance. Staff is currently recommending approval of the Codify Clayton Unified Development Ordinance, and that's ordinance 2023-10-03, and that is including recommended changes 1 through 12 in the errata document. And then noting the planning board recommendation was unanimous at the September 25th meeting. And there is a consistency statement that consists of Chad's desires or the necessary requirements on page 2 of the staff report. But please make sure that you do note that it is of best interest of the public. I want to thank Ben Howell, our previous planning director, for his diligence on this project, as well as other town staff, Chad Meadows and all of his work, as well as the steering committee on the project. So staff is also here with questions if needed, but this is also a public hearing, so I want to notate that.
Yep. So this has been noted as a public hearing, and I'll now open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak, please step forward and state your name. All right. There's no one wishing to speak. I'll close the public hearing and turn it over to council for their discussion. Mr. Casey.
I just want to say that I'm excited and a little bit anxious that we're here tonight. It seems like it was just yesterday that They're saying that this whole process was going to be at the end of the year, and now it's here. It seems like it went by extremely fast. But I would want to say to you, Chad, I appreciate what you've done. You've been firm at times. You've definitely played devil's advocate when you needed to. You've listened, and you've been very detail time oriented. So I appreciate you and your process. This rewrite was something that I felt like desperately the town needed as we sought to elevate the development expectations, focus on tree conservation, land conservation, and also help manage the growth that we're experiencing. I appreciate everybody's efforts and time in this, steering committee, Chad, your staff, advisory boards, council, and most importantly, the community. I feel like we're still getting feedback based on the document that has been drafted. So for me personally, and I have some more information, some clarification I'd like to get. So for me personally, I would prefer that we continue this process, just as long as we don't jeopardize that January 1st to 2024 deadline. I do not want to jeopardize that deadline. I want it to be effective and implemented then. But as for now, I'd prefer to table it or continue it till a time frame that seems adequate for us to kind of continue to look at it.
Ms. Archer?
Thank you. I agree with everything Councilmember Casey said. I think that we have a great code here that we're looking at tonight, and I'm especially pleased with the testing that came out of the testing phase of the code, as what the feedback that we got from that from Timmons, as well as the extensive feedback that we've taken from the development community. So I definitely think our process has been working. And as Councilmember Casey said, you know, we're continuing to get information and receive feedback, which is great. There has been a lot of public interest, which I didn't expect there to be so much from even outside of the development community, which is awesome. I'm in favor also of continuing this until something like the second meeting in November, something along those lines. For me, specifically, what I was looking for was additional time to read and understand some of the newer items in the errata document, just to make sure that I'm not voting on something I don't completely comprehend. And then I also wanted some additional time just to kind of see how the parts of the code that specifically address downtown would correlate with our downtown master plan, which is currently underway. Like Councilmember Casey, I want a January 2nd effective date. I don't expect for the downtown master plan to shape this process here, but I would like to just see a little bit more of development of that and making sure that we're basically adopting something that's in line there as well. And that was it. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Thompson?
Mayor, I move we continue the discussion or continue the ordinance 2023-1003 codified Clayton until the November 20th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue this item to the November 20th, 2023 meeting. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you. Is there a specific amount of time that council would like to, of course, until November 20th, but I want to make sure that there's ample time to work with council at the staff level to make sure that any questions or anything are addressed. So if you would please consider providing any feedback or questions to staff as soon as they come up, even if it continues or is over multiple interactions with staff, just so that we can constantly be working with the entire council to make sure you're informed in the moment, and we are taking into account that we want to meet that January 2nd date.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I could make a request there, if you have specific items that you know you want to discuss, if you could get those to Jonathan possibly by the end of the week, that way between him and Chad, they can compile and get any information together. And if we need to go ahead and create some space on the retreat November 9th, we can go ahead and utilize that time while you're all together to finalize any discussion at that point. Thanks.
And even if it's just a question, it doesn't necessarily have to have content with it.
All right, perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, up next, under old business is the amendment to Lumen Copper District Elevated Storage Tank Option to Purchase Agreement and Acceptance of American Rescue Plan Funds.
Mr. Mayor.
Over to Rich Capola.
Yep, I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, I'll be covering that tonight for Joshua. Sorry about that, no feedback. As you can recall, a couple of years ago, during what was at the time the Lumen project, now Copper District, the town entered into a put agreement for the developer to actually construct a 1 million gallon water tank on the property, with the town providing reimbursement funds for the town's portion of that betterment enlargement of that project to the million gallons. Since then, originally we had requested $4 million of ARPA funds in Session Law 2021 with the plan to build a tank on the north of the river in the Riverwood area. Since then, the counties finished their project to combine our two water systems, which then freed up that $4 million to be applied to this water tank project. The caveat to that being it's ARPA funds. We are the recipient of those $4 million. So the town really needs to be the deliverer of that project and the management of that project. So we've renegotiated that contract with the developer to switch it around, where we are now going to be in control of the project and manage it moving forward. We've got it to their proportional share of the original project with a fee in lieu of $1.7 million will be provided to the town, and the town will then construct the project in its totality. One caveat to this, there is a lighting package that was originally agreed upon. That package will be fully borne, the cost of that package will be fully borne by the developer on the back end of this project as well. So if you are all happy with this, it's a two-part action, I believe, on this one. One would be an approval of the agreement as pending final legal review as noted in the summary of the cover sheet, and then adoption of Resolution 2023-77, which formally accepts the ARPA funding.
Okay. Questions or comments for staff? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the agreement pending final legal review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the agreement pending final legal review. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve adoption of Resolution 2023-77.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the adoption of Resolution 2023-77. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. And the motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along to staff reports, beginning with the town manager.
Main thing I just wanted to say today is say thank you to all the staff that were involved in putting together the swearing in ceremony earlier today for Chief David Rains, and welcome Chief Rains to the Clayton family here. We're excited to have you aboard. I appreciate all the council as well that were there and in attendance. That was a great event, very well attended, and we're looking forward to getting Chief Rains integrated here with all the great work that we've got going on in the fire service. Other than that, I'm still digging out from being on vacation next week, so there's probably other things we got to follow up on, but we'll get to you this week as best. Thanks.
Did he say he's going to be on vacation next week?
You meant last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last week, excuse me.
It's okay. Just clarifying. Town attorney. Thanks, sir. Town clerk.
No report.
Thank you. Any other staff? All right, I'll now open the floor for public comment. Anyone wish to speak? No one wishing to speak. I'll turn it over to council for comments. Mr. Casey.
I just want to say or thank the Public Art Advisory Board for the yarn bombing they did downtown. It was quite a surprise. It drew a lot of attention from the community, Facebook too. So it's a unique project that a lot of towns I don't think have done in this area. I appreciate their effort. And if you haven't noticed it, please walk around downtown, Horn Square, Town Square, and the library, and look at the colorful decorated trees. I think they plan on keeping that project up through the fall and into the winter, and hopefully it'll be something that they can grow on every year.
Awesome. Mr. Avery.
I just want to say thank you, staff, thank you, council, and citizens. I think this has been a great experience, being on this council and just seeing where we were and where we are now, especially when it comes to Codify Clayton, which I should have said this before, but of course, just making sure, I think we're doing our due diligence with kind of tabling this just to make sure we have the full picture before rolling this out, because this is a big deal. And I also, appreciate how, I feel like town government, our council, staff, and abroad, I feel like, it reflects what our community looks like. And I think it shows serious engagement and, just a reflection. And it just, I love that we're moving in this direction. So thank you, everybody. This has been a good experience.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Thompson.
I just want to say, since Rich talking about his vacation, that while he was gone, his deputy managers were extremely hard at work and communicating with us on some pretty big things that were happening. And I think that's a testament to your leadership, that you've prepared people to do great jobs in your absence, and they did. And so I just want to thank our two deputy managers for all of their hard work every day. But when you were on vacation, I felt like everything went super smooth, and they stayed in touch when they needed to and kept everything going great.
Nobody called me, but it's okay.
That's what I'm saying. They did a good job. They're a good job. They're not calling us. They're not calling us. It means good job. That's right. That's what I'm saying. They're not calling us. It's a good job.
He was on vacation?
I bet Porter called you.
I think technically he called me. Once.
Well, he called me 3 times to get away from his in-laws. I'm just kidding. That is not true. All right. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's good work and all the good things that are going on in Clayton. And Chief Raines was super happy to have you be a part of the Clayton family. And we're looking forward to your leadership. And we honestly don't feel like there's anybody out there any better for this job than you were. So thank you for agreeing to come to Clayton. Yeah. And good luck dealing with Lee and Dolores. All right. If there's nothing else to come, if there's nothing else to come before this council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Good night.